Good evening. Welcome to Earth to the Other Side. My name is John, your host, and tonight I have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Kevin Milsom out of the UK. How you doing there, Kevin?
I'm doing really well at 10 o'clock at night. I'm doing really, really well.
Wonderful. I'm so happy to have you on the program. So you
Lovely to
had
be
your
here. Thank
near-death
you.
experience back in 2018, so that wasn't too long ago.
No,
Yeah,
6 years now. Yeah.
6 years. Still fresh in your
Mm.
mind, I bet.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely. I think that's the thing. It's still as vivid now as it was 6 years ago. So yeah, it's far beyond any form of dream or anything like that. I can still relive every moment of it now, and I've been able to retain the memory of it, which is really wonderful.
I bet, I bet. Well, on that note, I'll just hand the floor over to you and you can tell us all about it.
Thank you.
Thank
In
you.
in October 2018, I was very ill. I didn't realize how ill I was, otherwise I'd have probably had a heart attack and died. I was struggling with sepsis, and sepsis had got in through my right foot and was basically eating me alive. By the time I got to hospital, I thought I was just going to hospital for a day. I've never stayed in hospital before in my life. I've always been ridiculously fit. And they told me that I was going to have to stay. I was a little bit confused because sepsis kind of makes you like that. But suddenly I'm in a hospital bed, and then I'm having surgery on my foot. And I realized that they were amputating my right foot, or most of my right foot. And they took a look at it and they said, the sepsis is still going. We're going to have to cut your right leg off. And I said, okay. And I said, when's that? And they said, at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, we have to do it soon, because if it goes above the knee, that's it. It's game over, obviously. So I was fine with that. I didn't realize, but when they think you're going to die in hospital, they wake you up every hour to make sure that you're still kind of like breathing. So I was being woken up on the hour, and I got woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning on the morning of the operation of the amputation. And they took my blood and they tested my blood sugar and my blood pressures. And they took my temperature, etc., and asked me if I was okay. And I said, yeah, I'm fine. And the nurse went away, and it was very quiet in there at that time in the morning. And I had a pain in my chest. I'd struggled with the operation because I was on so many antibiotics that my heart had started to give out on the operating table. So they brought me back. And I'd come back in time to hear them chopping bits of me off. And I was so out of it, I thought that they were making a Christmas tree or something. I just didn't know what was going on. But my heart had struggled a lot. And I had this pain in my chest, John, and I thought, well, I don't like to make a fuss or anything, the poor nurse is on night duty. But it got so bad, I went to reach for the buzzer at the side of my bed, and the next thing I know, I must have fallen backwards because everything went black. The next thing that's happening is I'm traveling at warp 9 down a tunnel, feet first. The tunnel is dark. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's light enough that I can see bits of the tunnel kind of flashing by. And I'm thinking, okay, this is unusual, not your average Thursday. And I came out of the tunnel, and I found myself in a beautiful room. I found myself in a room that was white beyond white. It was almost a glimmering, shimmering, shining white. It felt as if it was almost a living thing. The floors were glowing, the walls, the ceiling. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not quite taking everything. I'm just dealing with all these stimuli as they happen. And then in front of me and to my right, I see a group of people. And at the front of the group of people is my mother, who'd been dead at that stage for 9 years, and my stepfather, Dennis, who had been dead for 13 years. And my mother, at the end of her life, was physically immobile, couldn't speak, was in a terrible state, had dementia, had no cognitive abilities whatsoever, and was confined to a bed. And she ran towards me like a 10-year-old. She skipped towards me, and she looked about 40 years younger. And Dennis followed on dutifully, as he always did. And my mother just began talking to me. in her usual animated way, in her lovely West Country accent, and she spoke like a Gatling gun. And she was just telling me about spirit and heaven. And she was going, oh, so you won't believe, oh, the colors, the animals, the plants, the trees, the sky. Oh, this, and she was just, oh, I'm still in a state of what the blinking heck is going on here. Because again, I'm reacting to the stimuli as they happen, but I'm also finding that I can juggle about 20 thoughts in my head at once. I become extremely cognitive and I'm very aware and I'm trying to take everything in. And she's telling me about heaven, the spirit world. Oh, you just see, oh, it's so, you won't believe it. And poor Dennis is trying to get a word in edgeways at the back, and he, as usual, he can't. And she's just so excitable. And I'm taking this in, and slowly it begins to dawn on me that where I am and what is going on. And at the same time as I do that, I begin to have a very heavy internal dialogue with myself. And I guess, John, it would be like a kind of mini life review, because I knew that if there was a very faint door in the wall in front of me, and somebody inside me told me if I went through that door, that's it. I'm not coming back through. That's game over. And I'm looking at the door and I'm hearing my mother talking. I kind of close her out for a bit and I begin to have this internal dialogue, which basically consists of, am I ready to go and have I done enough with my life? And I scan back through my life and I realize, okay, I've been married for 35 years. I've raised a family. I've had good jobs. I've done this, I've done that. And then I hit my creative side, which is very strong, but I've never had any confidence in myself to do it. So I compose music, I write books, I've worked as a writer, but I've never produced anything under my own name because I've always felt, well, who's going to read that? I'm no Charles Dickens, am I? I've composed music which has never been published 30 odd years ago, because again, who's going to listen to that? I'm not exactly Beethoven, am I? And I've had this mentality and this self-destructive element probably for the last 35 years. And all this was kind of replaying to me all the times that I could have done that in 1998. Why didn't I do that in 1994? Why didn't I do that in 2003? And I'm getting really kind of emotional because I'm realizing that creatively, my life has been a big failure. I've not achieved anything of what I wanted to do. And I can hear my mother's voice still going on in the background, bless her. And I'm completely shutting her out. And I'm thinking, no, this isn't right. And she realizes, and she says, oh, as usual, you're not listening to me. And she said, well, if you're not going to listen to me, listen to him. And I'm thinking, who? I looked at Dennis. No, she didn't mean him. And out of the door, kind of floated this wonderful man. Now, I'm not a religious person, John. I'm not a Christian. I'm fascinated by religion, but I don't adhere to any one faith. But if I had been a Christian, I would have said that was Jesus of Nazareth or Jesus Christ, because he did look like him, although I would say he was more European in his face. But he came towards me, and by this time, I'm really giving myself, a really hard time, but I'm being brutally honest. And he walked towards me, and as he got close to me, I began to calm down. And he looked at me and he said, why are you here? And I thought, I don't know, because I was kind of hoping that he would tell me. And I said, well, and then I just let it all out on him. And I said, well, I haven't achieved anything. I haven't done anything, blah, 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 blah. And I was getting really emotional. And he put his hand on my arm, and immediately I calmed down. And every time that I would say something, he would just knock it back to me like in a tennis match. And I would say, blah, 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 blah. And he just said, what do you want to do, Kevin? What do you want to do? And I thought, oh, well, I'd like to do this, and I'd like to do that, and I'd like to finish that project I started in 1987, and I'd like to do this, and I'd like to build that, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, there you go. Now tell me again, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to create things. I want to make things. And I started to get every time I got animated, he would just calm me, his voice. The weird thing is also, John, my mother had spoke to me with her mouth. With this gentleman, it was purely telepathic. No movement of the mouth at all. I could hear his voice in my mind. Very, very calming, very deep, very resonant. I felt that I knew him. So my assumption 6 years later is that he was some kind of spirit guide. He was certainly a teacher and certainly a very wise, patient, and empathic soul, way beyond anything I've ever felt or imagined in my life. And he just said to me again, "What do you want to do, Kevin?" And I said, "I want to write, I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to help people, and I want to blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Well, okay, then do it." And he looked into my eyes, and the next thing I'm awake in my hospital bed, and I've got a tear running down my cheek. And I think about 15 minutes had passed. And I thought, wow. But the weird thing is, John, when I was in my hospital bed, I came back and I have this ring around my middle, like a donut, and I'm in the hole in the center. And I've got this energy around me, and it feels phenomenal. It wasn't there, certainly wasn't there before I passed out on the bed. I've got this wonderful ring of energy. I won't call it light. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. And it felt like just unconditional love. Now, at the time, I was working as a what we call a distance healer for a network online. And basically, there were 1,000 of us around the world, and we would get cases every week, and we would send out distant healing to people all around the world for free of charge. And it was just a wonderful thing to be involved with. And there were about, as I said, 1,000 of us. And I didn't know because I'd been so unwell, but my wife had gone onto Facebook, and my wife had contacted this network and said, "Look, Kevin is slipping. He's, because they told her she'd had that awful phone call. You need to come into hospital now. He's fading fast. You need to come in quickly." And so she obviously went onto Facebook and said, "Look, Kevin, I've had some bad news. Kevin's fading quickly. He's fighting for his life. Please send him healing." And so many hundreds of people responded, and there were spiritual people, there were religious people, Christians, Sikhs, Hindus, atheists, agnostics. They sent what they could. And then also the 1,000 distant healers had also sent me healing as well. So I had about 1,500, 1,600 people praying for me. And it felt like this energy was around me in my hospital bed about 5:30 in the morning. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I didn't know about any of this. So I not been well enough to go online. I got my laptop, I went onto Facebook, and I saw all the messages. And this energy just completely resonated around my middle. And a voice in my head just said, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be fine." And I spent the next 3.5 hours kind of staring into space, reliving everything, saying goodbye to my right leg and all the good times that we'd had. Because I knew at 9 o'clock, that was it. I was going to be one leg short. And my surgeon came in who had saved my life, bless him. And he had a head nurse with him who I'd not seen before. She'd been on holiday. And I had apparently the worst injury to a foot the hospital had ever seen, without the leg immediately having to be taken off. So my foot became famous for about a day with all the student nurses because they'd never saw this injury, only in drawings and textbooks. So they were coming in, taking photos and selfies with it. It was quite odd. And he said, "Oh, you want to see his nurse?" He said, "He's going down for the amputation in about 10, 15 minutes. And he said, "Have a look at his foot." He said, you'll never see anything like it." And she unwrapped all the bandages and everything else, and he goes on his rounds around the ward. And she unwraps it, and she's looking at it like that. And I thought, yeah, it must be bad. I'd seen it once, and it looked like something out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It really did look vile, horrible, something from a horror film. And I thought, yeah, I bet you've never seen one like that. And she said, "Doctor, can you come here, please?" And he said, "Oh, I've seen it. I was the one who did the operation on it." And she said, "No, you really need to come." Now, bear in mind, the day before, the sepsis, my foot and leg had gone black up to the shin, a solid black, and it was starting to go gangrene as well. and it wasn't in a good state. And she said, "Doctor, I think you really need to come over." And he came to the foot of the bed and he looked at it and he swore. And I thought, well, that can't be a good thing. So now I've got a vested interest in this. And I said, "I think you need to let me in on this, because I need to, I mean, what's going on down there? Have I got a horse's hoof? I mean, is there an alien coming out? What's going, you need to let me in here." And he said, "Well, you need to look for yourself." And I thought, oh God, not again. And I looked at it, John, and it was as pink as a baby's bottom. I could have ate my dinner off it.
Hmm.
And he looked at me as if I had four heads, and he said, "How has this happened?" And I thought, well, I've got a bit of an idea, but I'm not going to tell you because you won't believe me. And he looked at it and he said, "Well, yeah, the body is a wonderful thing, isn't it, Kevin?" And he said, "Anyway, you good news, you're not going down for amputation anymore, because all trace of the sepsis has disappeared. It's gone." And the nurse said, "But doctor, how can that happen?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "It's just one of those things that happens. It's one of those things." And the nurses kind of understood, because they knew that I was into kind of spiritual things. And I got talking to a couple of them, and I think they'd seen similar things happen before, but the doctors were far too pessimistic for that sort of thing. And I was in hospital for over a month, and they told me it would never heal because my foot was basically like a hollow cup. I could look down where my toes used to be, and I could see my ankle. So there's nothing in the middle. So he said, "It's never going to heal, Kevin." And 2 weeks later, it started to heal. And they said, "Well, that can't happen because there's no material in there for it to knit together. There's nothing. It's all gone." I had a few bones, some of which were in the wrong place, and my tendons, and that was it. And they said, "Well, it's not going to, you'll still need a load of plastic surgery. We'll need to fill it up with plastic." And it took 3 weeks to completely heal. And they said, "Well, you're weird. We don't know how this happened." The only one who understood me, John, was the hospital chaplain, who came around, and she came in and she said, "Do you believe in," she said, "Are you a Christian?" And I said, "No, I'm not." But she said, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Yes, I do." And she said, "Okay." And she was a trained medic. And she said, "I've seen your notes, Kevin." She said, "You shouldn't be alive. And you certainly should have one less leg than you do have." And she sat with me for an hour, and we talked about the power of God's healing and the power of God's love. And we sat and we prayed. We held hands and we prayed, and lovely energy. And there was, just a wonderful sense of, isn't it wonderful what God can do? Isn't it wonderful what spiritual prayer can do, spiritual healing can do? And it was just wonderful. And I was out of hospital just over a month. I still have a few issues with it, with my foot, but essentially, I didn't need plastic surgery. I didn't die, and they can't. It doesn't say officially on my medical notice, "Mr. Milsom is very hard to kill," which I'm going to put on my CV, on my resume, because they said we've no idea why that happened. They did say that my positive mentality probably would cover at least half of it, because they said to me, you can lose your leg or you can die." And I said, "Well, that's no problem. I'll have a robot leg." And they said, and they thought I was still sort of like going a bit crazy with the sepsis. And I said, no. I said, to me, it's common sense. Who wants to die? I can live with a robot leg. Because I can still write, I can still do my things, I can still compose music, I still got my brain. So to me, it would have just been, okay, it just makes me a little bit more interesting. So I had no problem with losing the leg whatsoever. But at the end of the day, John, something weird happened that day. And when I came back after the near-death experience, everything felt different. Everything felt full of light and hope. And ever since then, I've really tried to change my mentality and become a stronger, bolder, braver person. And so far, it's going really, really well. And I'm just trying to help people as much as I can. I've studied for a load of things. I now teach spirituality. I teach meditation. I do it online and offline. And we're just helping people in the local community. I'm writing. I plan to be composing again this year. I'm 95% through my first book. Everything's going well. Everything feels different. It feels lighter. And I think I just come back, like so many people who've had the near-death experiences, I've come back a changed person. I'm not as meek and mild as I was maybe. I don't interrogate myself so much. I just go for it. I just really go for it now because I realized that, back then I could have been a hospital statistic. I could have died very easily.
Hmm.
And I know had I gone through the door, I would have died.
Yeah.
But my life just, I hadn't achieved what I wanted to achieve creatively. And so I'm just going to spend the rest of my days completely filling in all of those blanks and hitting all of those goals. And hopefully I can live to 178 and I might get half of them done. But yeah, but I am a completely changed person, John. A completely changed person.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And the power of prayer is just so immense.
It's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It's something that I try to teach. I've been teaching meditation for 30 years, but I'd never got qualified in it. And so when I left hospital, and I got better after recuperation, I trained to be a meditation teacher, and I trained in other spiritual aspects as well. And teaching people the power of positive prayer and thought is phenomenal. And we try to share that out online and offline. And we just try to give people the hope that, they can cope with anything in life. They can deal with anything in life. And our meditations are great because they last about 25 minutes, but then we have about 2.5 hours of talk with tea, coffee, and cake. And that's where I think the main help is done, because what we've done is create a safe zone. And so people feel free to be able to talk about anything.
Hmm.
And death comes up as a topic, and the fear of death and dealing with bereavement. And we're able to just sit and share what we have been through in life, what we've been through in our many years together on life. And we've got a lot of newer, younger people coming in now, and they're able to kind of, join in the conversation and share in that. And we listen to each other. And, to me, that's how life should be, John. It should be like that. And I try to do that online, and we're doing it offline now. And it's just, I feel, I certainly wouldn't have been able to do this prior to my NDE. I would have been racked with nerves. I would have probably needed three bottles of Jack Daniels to even get close to doing it, and that wouldn't have been good. And I wouldn't have had the nerve to do it, because I thought, well, who wants to listen to me? Who wants to listen to me? I'm nobody. I'm not anything. And since the near-death experience, it's like, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah. Everybody's nobody.
I don't care how much, I just do it. And that's again what we try to give outwards, that life is precious and life is fleeting. And I think once you've experienced nearly dying, and at 55, it's no age to die. I've just lost a dear friend at 55, again to sepsis. And, their life was ahead of them. They had so much to live for. And I've lost other friends, not much older than me. And you think life is so fleeting, life is so short, and and literally make the most of every minute of every day. Feel productive and do the best that you can. And I think if we can spread that message out, along with the fear of death and dying, and that life does continue beyond this physical veil, then I can't think of a more worthy cause, John, to try
Mhm.
and get that point out there.
You're here. Yeah, definitely. It sounds great. It sounds like you're on the right track, that's for sure.
Mm.
And I think your story is really inspiring, and I hope you continue to tell it like in everywhere, because it's a great story. It's a great experience. I guess it didn't occur to ask who you were speaking with, like
No,
ask him his name.
no, I was too busy with my internal dialogue
Yeah, that's what I
at the
figured.
time.
Yeah.
My memories of him, he was a little bit shorter than me. I'm 6'3". He was a little bit shorter than me. He had brown, long hair. He had a white robe on, which shimmered with color. He had a beard. He had bright blue eyes. He looked to me to be, I would say, Greek, maybe something
Mhm.
like that, Greek, Mediterranean.
Mhm.
His eyes were piercing. His voice was incredibly soothing. And again, not verbal, purely mental. And his voice resonated through me and cut off any other thoughts that I had. And I had a lot of thoughts in my head at that time. I was really thinking an awful lot of things. And his he was unconditional love. He was pure patience. He was so empathic with me. He was empathizing with me, and I felt he understood everything that I was going through, even though I hadn't said, I wasn't saying it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like he was just so tuned into me, which is again, maybe I'm thinking it's some form of master, some form of, well, yeah, I would say certainly some form of master. But I felt maybe he was connected to me as a spiritual guide, a guardian.
It's interesting because, you know, in most cases that I, you know, in a lot, with a lot of people I've spoken to have had these types of experiences, it's most often telepathic. There's never ever
Mm,
actual speaking. So I thought that was really interesting that you were speaking with your mom and then telepathically communicating with this
yeah, it's weird. I
divine
didn't think
figure.
about that at the time until somebody asked a question in a Facebook group, and I thought, oh, I thought I'd not put that together because I could see my mother's mouth going up and down, bless her, at a rapid rate.
I wonder if it was for comfort level, you know, they just maybe
Yeah,
at that time felt you'd be more comfortable with the mouth moving.
yeah. I mean, it's very odd because you, as I say, you're taking in. I was taking in so many stimuli, and yet I was cognitive enough to deal with all of the stimuli. I think in everyday life, I'd be going, whoa, 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 guys. But I was able to think about 100 things at once.
Mhm.
And I was, oh, and part of me, I have to be truthful, part of me was thinking, it does sound good behind that door. My mother did a good sales job on that. I did want to see the animals. I did want to see the singing trees. I did want to see the dancing flowers. I did want to see, you know, all the pandas and the elephants, and because I love animals and adore them. And she made it sound so wonderful. And I think I know because people have asked me, why did you come back? You idiot. Why did you come back? Why, you know, and people say, oh, if I was there, I would have. And I think, well, would you? I don't know. I mean, it's a very individual thing, isn't it? I knew I had to come back. I also knew somehow when the gentleman came in, it's like I was picking up from him. And I sensed that time where I was in that room was not the same as on Earth. I felt that it went completely different. And I thought, okay, I'm 55. I might live to 80, maybe. I've got another 25 years. But I know that 25 years is going to be in spirit terms, whoosh. So I know that before long, you know, in spirit terms, I'm going to be back in that room and I'm going to be beating that door down because I want to see the singing trees and the dancing flowers and all the rest of it. And I know that it's going to be amazing. I know I'm going to be seeing colors I haven't seen before because my mother described it so perfectly. And she adored nature. She adored her flowers.
Kevin, at what point in time did you realize, like, did you get the awareness that you had died? At what point was it in the tunnel
I
or
think
afterwards?
just after when my mother was talking to me, she was pointing at the door, and it slowly it started to dawn on me. Weirdly enough, when I'm flying down a tunnel at warp 9, nothing. I go into the room, I'm looking around, I'm still dreaming. It's like I kind of reached the point of coping and realization. I thought, oh, if I go beyond that door, I'm chips. I'm done. I'm gone.
Mhm.
Oh, I died. It's kind of like a slow realization. And then there was the fact of I don't want to go beyond that door because I know I have so much to do and I haven't achieved what I wanted to do. And it's very important to me to do that. And I weighed it up, and a part of me said, let's go beyond the door. Tiny part of me wanted to go. But the majority of me said, no, it's not the right, it's tempting as that was, and as tempting as my lovely mother had made it sound. I knew I had to return. I knew that my work here wasn't done. I hadn't put the effort in that I could have done, and I'd not achieved any work, maybe 5% of my full potential.
So do you think that Had you made the decision to stay where you were in that realm, that you would have stayed, or would they have sent you back, or did you just not know? I guess.
I think I would have stayed, John. I genuinely think I would have stayed, but I also think that I would have had to come back and do it all over again. But yeah, I've still got maybe 30 years of life left, or 25 years of life left. I don't think about it like that. I don't fear death. I've never felt death. I've had some wonderful out of body experiences that were probably as powerful as my near death.
Did
And
you have a
so, and
kind
I've
of
been,
fear of death before your NDE? I know you were involved
no,
spiritually with many things, but was it had it been like that for a while since you
no, as a
had no fear?
child, I did. As a child, I did. Um, and then once I found spirituality in my early 20s, very early 20s, and I began developing spiritually, and I worked as a healer, and I worked as a medium over here in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And so I've always read widely from the age of about 7 or 8, which is when I had my first paranormal experience. And I've got a very skeptical, logical mind. So I have an open mind, but I need to know the truth behind the situation. I'm not going to accept something willy-nilly. I need to look into the facts. So a lot of my books are research into various aspects of parapsychology. Um, and I want to know the truth, John. At the end of the day, I want to know what it is. And so I've always had that kind of mentality. And I've been blessed to have some very unusual spiritual experiences, very wonderful spiritual experiences, which have left me in absolutely no shadow of doubt that life continues beyond physical death. I'm not keen on the way that I might go, obviously. I don't want to be run over by a steamroller, but I think of better ways.
It's,
But
I always say Mack truck, but steamroller is funnier.
yes, neither of them are good. Neither. Stay away from them, people. But
Hey, before I get into your orchestra of singing bowls back there, I wanted to ask
yes, my
you,
lovely crystal singing bowl.
yeah, we're gonna ask you
Yes.
about that after, but just remind me in case I forget. Your life review, because you said you sort of stumbled upon your life review on your own within the context of your NDE, which I also find really interesting.
Yeah.
So when this happened to you, where were you in context? Were you just airborne in darkness, or were you still in that light, bright room where you had
I
met?
was still in the room,
Hmm.
but I kind of faded inside I kind of got into my inner self. It was weird because my mother was still going yabbity, yabbity, yabbity.
Hmm.
Birds, flower, trees, colors. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And I kind of went inside myself and zoned, I don't know if I zoned out or zoned in, but I began an internal dialogue, and my creative life began to flash before me.
So was it
All the
dreamlike in a
things I'd
way?
written,
Do you know what I mean?
eh?
When it was happening, was it sort of dreamlike in a way, or what?
It was like wham, 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 wham. It's like I said, my cognitive status was phenomenal. I was so self-aware. And it was like I could deal with 100 or 1,000 things at the same time and juggle them. Whereas on life, if I get 3 things, I would probably be flattened and confused. Um, but I was able to process all of this information. I had no weight to me. I had no physical kind of heaviness to me at all. I felt free and light. And I was able to process information at a ridiculous, like data for Star Trek, at a ridiculous speed.
Hmm.
And I was weighing everything up. It was almost like a court case. I was waiting, here's the prosecution, here's the defense. Why haven't you done this? Well, I was, blah, blah, blah. I was rubbish at it, blah, blah, blah. And it just slowly dawned on me over a period of maybe a couple of minutes. I've not been good enough. I failed. I'm a flop. I'm a failure. And that really hurt me. And when the gentleman came in, I was at the stage where I was at the peak of this going, you idiot, you blah, blah, blah. And all of this stuff. Why haven't you done this? And I couldn't understand why I hadn't done it, because I'm, I'm not egotistical in any way, but I know that I have a talent for writing and I have a talent for composition. And I've been told enough times. So why don't I do it? Oh, well, I don't like to because I don't like to make a fuss. And I thought, oh, you moron, you idiot. And it just was building up. And when this gentleman came in, bless him, he just calmed me down. with a touch of the arm, and everything went zero. And I thought, wow. And I was able to think clearly. And when he asked me, what do I want to do? I had answers by that stage. I need to go back. I need to do something. I need to finish that project I started 10 years ago. And that one I started 20 years ago. And I've got some fresh ideals that I thought of yesterday. And blah, 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 blah. And the more that I got kind of, I was gibbering at him, mentally, the calmer he became. He was just, it's really hard. And again, I work as a writer now, and I struggle to put words to this. And I've got a good vocabulary, but I struggle to put it into words. I could probably put it into music better, actually. But it's or create something, compose something. It's so hard to put words to the feelings that it felt like just the connection. I was connected to everything, and I felt this before. I had a wonderful out-of-body experience in 1986.
I don't think you're going to be able to put that into the words. You're going to probably have to put that into the music.
Mostly. Yeah.
When was the first time you spoke to someone about your near-death experience?
That would be my wife. I think it was the next day. She came in to see me the following morning, and I'm pretty sure I told her about it then. And then I told my friends, most of whom were open-minded. I told my brother. I told my sister. I told people who I knew would respond in a positive way. I have also been asked to explain it to people who don't understand, and they find it interesting. That's about as far as they'll go. And then since that time, I've tried to share it online on social platforms. If somebody asks about it in a question, because I think there's that need on platforms like that to spread hope and to give people hope. And so I find that when I share my message, I think the most recent was 3 days ago, and I had about 13 people contact me and tell me that had made a difference to them. And I thought, wow, just somebody asking me what had happened during my A&D, and I went blah blah blah, gave about 10 lines of script, and somebody said, I read that 3 times because it meant so much to me. And since coming back, I started up another group on Facebook called Spiritual Upliftment and Positivity, because I get tired of the news, obviously, in the world. And so I created a channel that's been going for some years now, and it's just purely about putting in uplifting things and about humanity looking at itself and saying, look what we can do, and looking at the animal kingdom and seeing the wonders of that, the wonders of nature, the wonders of spirituality, the power of kindness, the power of care and empathy and, respect and all of those things. And I think everything just comes together. Everything is connected, John. I think everything is joined. And I think, if we help, like with me, when I came back, I was positive-minded, and suddenly a door opened, and then 2 more opened, and then 3 more opened. And I thought, wow, I'm not used to this. Why hasn't this happened before? Because I wasn't, the doors were opening, and I was going, oh, no. Mm-hmm. I think you want somebody else, far taller and more handsome than me, and far more talented. And now I'm going, yeah, hold that door, I'm coming through. And I think, maybe we have to be that way sometimes. And I kind of do wish I'd been a bit more, selfish, but egotistical, maybe. I'd been a bit more driven and certainly more confident to do it. And like I said, at 55, I've been given a second chance, a second life, and I'm going to make the very best of it, the very most of it. And, I can only be thankful for that day, for that experience, along with many other experiences. And, I'm very happy with my life at the moment, and I'm very driven to help as many people as I can. And I've got my first book coming out soon, and that is largely autobiographical. I talk about the near-death experience in that book, actually. And it's poetry and short stories mostly with an uplifting spiritual theme.
Kevin, thank you so much for your time, man. It's been a real joy talking.
It's been wonderful to meet you, John. Thank you so much.